Hi, welcome to Relish Books. Today I'm talking briefly about Maisie Dobbs by Jacqueline Winspear. Been working on this for a while, kind of got stuck part way, just a little way in, but this was another one of my books that I was committed to finishing this week, and I finished it this afternoon. So it's supposed to just be kind of like an easy read. I feel like it's a detective, investigator type story. This book goes on to be the first in a long series. And at some point, I might try those later books just to see if the writing improves, because in a long series, there is a good chance that the writing will improve. But with this first one, it doesn't really give me much reason to want to go on. I love a good mystery. I really enjoy that genre once in a while, kind of for just relaxing, fun reads. I really like Agatha Christie, but the writing was very amateur, in my opinion. It was just awkward. That kind of writing that's just a little bit wrong. Obviously, the writer has a fine vocabulary. She had a fine story to tell. Her writing is just off. I was cringing all the way through it, reading it. Every once in a while there'd be a good line and I would be like, oh, that's a good line. But for the most part, it just reminds me how difficult good writing really is. Because it's hard to even pinpoint exactly what's wrong with this writing, other than just when you read it, the sound of it does not sound good. Clearly it missed the mark. Her dialogue is just corny, emotional without ringing true. Another writer would be able to tell the same story, use a lot of the same subjects of dialogue, and yet have it feel true. I think part of it was how openly people were just constantly expressing their deep feelings. Real people don't really talk like that. I think part of it was her phonetically spelling accents that I think she's familiar with. I think the author's British, but it did not work. I've read plenty of books where those accents are employed and work completely fine. Hers felt heavy-handed and fake. Just very amateur writing. Again, the plot was fine. I felt like the way that she broke it up wasn't really good. I felt like it would have been better to maybe have this first book even be, I don't know. I was going to say have the first book be 2 books. I don't think she needed to do that, but maybe she needed to narrow down that middle section a little bit, because you have the opening of the story with Maisie setting up as a psychologist and private investigator, and then you get a few chapters of that, and then the book dives into her past, and the majority of the book, at least the middle third, but it felt like more, is her backstory. And it's long-winded, it's repetitive, the relationships don't feel real or make a lot of sense, particularly the relationship with her father just feels so bland, so artificial. So there's this whole middle chunk, and then by the time, at least for me, and if I'd read it faster, it might not have been this way, by the time I got back to the main plot, which is this, there's this retreat, it's called the Retreat for Wounded Men from the War. The war's been about 10 years ago. This was World War I. World War I's been about 10 years ago, and there's this place for soldiers who are still having trouble adjusting, particularly those with certain kinds of wounds and stuff. But the place is a little bit sinister. Some people have died under mysterious circumstances. So that's the main thing she's investigating. But by the time you get back around to that storyline, I feel like I had almost forgotten it. I was like, okay, what is she doing again? Because you've been gone for so long, and that entire backstory is to tell you, yes, who she is, but also to give you context for what happens eventually at the end of the book. But it was just, I feel like that middle section was too much. it's supposed to be a detective story, and most of it wasn't. Most of it was just Maisie's backstory, which I think could have been narrowed so much more. It felt like she wanted to write more about Maisie's studies and work as a housemaid and all this stuff. I feel like she was more interested in writing about that than actually writing about her investigative work, which if you're writing a detective story, I don't feel like that's a good sign. I don't know, had a lot of problems with it. I know it's not supposed to be, it's not any great classic, it's not considered fine writing, but still gotta have standards, even for like a junk food read. And I like plenty of books that are junk food reads. Even for that, this writing was not good. Again, I think the plot was engaging. When you were actually in the plot, it was interesting. Fine idea. Didn't feel terribly original, but they don't have to. With all the thousands of murder mysteries out there, you can't have them all be original. They just have to be originally expressed. But I do not think her expressions were at all original. I feel like there was something else I was going to mention. Oh, yes. Another thing, I couldn't decide whether I liked or disliked that it doesn't explain this further, but Maisie isn't just an investigator and a psychologist. There's a little bit of the supernatural, but just like a tiny bit. It's never explained, it never delves into it, but she has the ability in certain circumstances to foretell the future. She can tell, she has like this amazing intuition, but it goes beyond that to where she can actually see glimpses of the future. That, as well as being able to not use telepathy, but by mimicking, it's an interesting kind of power. By mimicking a person's pose, she can experience whatever emotion they're going through at the moment. So she can essentially read their thoughts by reading their feelings, their literal feelings, not just like, oh, I can tell body language really well, so I can tell that you're sad or whatever. She adopts their pose, and she can actually physically and emotionally experience what the other person is experiencing. And I was kind of like, oh, this is a little odd. She has this ability that's never delved into, that's never really fully acknowledged. She kind of acknowledges it a little bit, but yeah, never goes any much beyond that. I guess she doesn't even really fully understand it. It's just something she's always been able to do. But yeah, that was kind of just like, that's not the focus of the story in any way. It's kind of like this little tiny side thing that she can do that honestly doesn't even really play into the story that much. It was kind of just like, oh, she has this ability which helps her out with her work with people. So, I don't know. Kind of a neat idea, I guess, to have a detective who also has kind of this little extra ability. I didn't really like her as a character, though. Don't think I really liked anybody in the book as characters. None of them felt real. Yeah, none of them were very likable. The ones that were supposed to be likable were so overly done, and Maisie's supposed to just be like this solidly good person. She was boring. Yeah. Those are my thoughts. Finished the book. Didn't love it. I don't think I will read more. Maybe eventually. If somebody comes on here and tells me that they get better as they go, maybe I will continue. But anyway, those are my thoughts for now on the first Maisie Dobbs book. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.